I am Dr. Paul Suratovich. I am the co-founder of Upflow, which is a geothermal innovation consultancy group based here in Aotearoa, New Zealand. I am currently in Rotorua, and I want to send Andy Blair's apologies to you all. She was struck with COVID finally after dodging it for about 3.5 years and took her down pretty hard. So you get me in her stead. But she sends her best to all. So thank you to Amanda for having us on board, and just want to give you a brief rundown of what we do at Upflow and how we kind of fit into the new Carbon Economy Consortia and what we want to see and do in the world. So if we can go to the next slide, please. So our ethos that we work to is we want to innovate and inspire others to use STEAM. That is very deliberate so that they can solve the world's most pressing problems. So that is science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics, excuse me, to solve the world's most pressing problems. And so why we say STEAM is that we work in the geothermal industry, and STEAM is one of the key fundamental pieces of what we do in our work. So if we can go to the next slide. So we work under this premise of the geosystem. So down on the lower left-hand corner of this plot, you have our geothermal reservoirs. Those are full of heat and water and all sorts of gases, CO2 being a big component of the gases within the reservoirs. We extract that heat and put it into a power station, which then goes into an electricity market. That's the traditional view on geothermal. However, we want to take a more holistic, whole system view of what happens in geothermal technologies. And so with the liquids that come out from underground, often they're laden with silica-rich minerals, often precious minerals. So some of the rare earth elements, some of those more rare elements that the world is seeking in abundance as we transition towards more electric vehicles and more advanced technologies. So we can take the minerals out of that fluid, but it also still has a latent heat to it. That heat then we can also use into additional applications. So that's potentially plugging in modular power, using that heat to run carbon capture, also running things like bioreactors and running that heat into greenhouses or running aquaculture or even going up into spa heating and health. And so using that whole system approach to use all of that energy that's coming from underground into an entire ecosystem, which we love to call the geosystem, because there's so many opportunities for more than just electricity production out of geothermal. So if we can go to the next slide, we have a great team of both engineers and scientists who are working on applying these technologies. And so I just want to give a shout out to our team because they're a great group of people, and some of those faces may be familiar. And like I said, Andy sends her best regards to you all there today. So if we can go to the next slide. So how do we work? We work in 3 different main work streams. Our research arm is focused on, can we build things in geothermal that put us on the leading edge of what the problems are that we're trying to solve in geothermal technology. As I said, we have mineral-laden brines moving through our pipework, through our turbines. That's an issue. So can we address that mineral-laden brine by removing those minerals and helping to keep the power plants up and running by removing some of that operational disruption from them? In that research, that puts us close to that leading edge of the emerging technologies. And our consultancy arm works very closely with the geothermal operators. A lot of the operators here in New Zealand, as well as in the Philippines, Indonesia, and the States, to actually find and make solutions for those day-to-day operational problems. And then innovation is where we try to bridge that gap. So we run problems down to the research level where we have a technology readiness of, say, a 2 or a 3, and how do we bridge it over into innovation? How do we actually bring it to market? And so if we can go to the next slide, I'll talk about one of those innovative projects. So this steaming ground that you see in front of you is the Pairariki stream, which is on one of our fields, one of our geothermal fields at Rotokawa. There's about 175 megawatts installed geothermal power on Rotokawa. But this steaming ground is actually about 100 degrees plus Celsius, so 212 degrees Fahrenheit at surface. And so we have some colleagues who sampled the ground there and found 2 extremophile organisms. One is a methanotroph, and so it's a bacteria that can uptake the methane that's coming out of the ground there and a phototroph, a species of Galdiaria. And so the concept with this extremophiles project is, can we take these extremophile, we lovingly call them bugs, and put them in a bioreactor and use them to uptake CO2 that's coming out of our geothermal plants or potentially other fossil fuel drive plants or other CO2 emitters, and actually create a sustainable food source from it. So down in the lower right-hand corner of that image, you see that kind of what looks like a cake batter or what have you. And what that is that's a combination of the algae and the bacteria that has been grown in a lab. And so we went and tested that with mice, and we fed it to them, and they actually had no ill effects. They didn't grow, massive arms, or it wasn't a steroid effect or anything like that. So that was the first step in the right direction to proving that this is potentially a good food source. The idea is that it can be a protein supplement. And here in New Zealand, we import a lot of protein supplements for our livestock. So having a twofold impact on the carbon footprint for our livestock. One, getting rid of the imports that we have, which is a lot of it is palm kernel extract and some other things from overseas that have a large shipping footprint, and also capturing that CO2 that's being emitted. So the next phase of this project is to actually scale this up and really make this in batches. So that batch that you see in front of you is about a kilo of the goo, and we want to make that in tons and megaton format. So we're on that first early stage of innovation, but there is a market opportunity there. So if we can go to the next slide. So another way that we're looking at how geothermal fits in, again, the theme being food here, is that I mentioned earlier, we have a little bit of excess heat at our geothermal systems. And so can we use that excess heat to run things like direct air capture, to also run modular power units using that excess heat, and subsequently run greenhouses? Here, New Zealand, we are an island nation, and so we are very reliant on external trade and imports. So can we help secure our domestic food supply by pulling carbon out of the air, putting it into glass houses, and not only creating a sustainable food supply, but also building a new market, so also jobs? So can we take our domestic CO2 problem and turn it into things like strawberries, tomatoes, capsicums? Everybody loves a good kiwi fruit, and export those overseas. So using that geothermal technology to bring it all together. And so I'll go to the last slide. And to scale this up to an even larger problem is sustainable aviation fuel. We all know that we all have a little bit of a guilty conscience when we get on an airplane because of the carbon footprint that it has. But there is a potential for geothermal in helping make sustainable aviation fuels. On the left-hand side, you have the traditional way to grow SAF, where you have feedstock growth, if it's biomass or if it's ponds of algae. And instead, what we're proposing is that we use the geothermal reservoir, which is already naturally letting out quite a bit of CO2, capturing that CO2 in addition to direct air capture, and providing that as a feedstock to our growth of sustainable aviation fuel. And so on the bottom part of that, you can see what that process flow might look like, is that we have the direct air capture, the power station, possibly using some of that excess power for electrolysis, running it through the elements to actually put it all together into the reboiler and the reactor process, running into a Fischer-Tropsch process, and then ultimately ending up with a sustainable aviation fuel. And so we see that geothermal is going to have that impact. It's still, we're in a very close to, excuse me, it's a pilot study at this stage, but we do have some domestic partners who are interested in this. And so watch this space as to how geothermal may play a role in sustainable aviation fuel in the years coming. So on to the next slide, and I will then hand over. But scientists, because engineers need heroes too. So we really appreciate your time today, and look forward to the panel. Thanks very much.